Okay, let's dive right into the cinematic explainer of what is easily history's greatest survival epic. Now, when we think of ancient Greek mythology, our minds usually go straight to battlefield glory, right? Clashing swords, impenetrable armor, all that stuff. But the story we're unpacking today, Homer's Odyssey, is fundamentally different. This isn't a story about winning a war. It's a story about surviving the peace. It's this incredibly gritty, desperate 10-year fight just to make it back to normal life without completely losing your mind along the way. And right out of the gate, we're hit with one of the most staggering geographical contradictions of the ancient world. If you plot Odysseus's actual route on a modern map, going from the ruins of Troy back to his island kingdom of Ithaca, it should take about 2 weeks. 2 weeks! Instead, it takes a decade. And no, it wasn't because he just, lost his map. As our sources reveal, this agonizingly long delay is fueled by a really toxic mix of divine interference, human arrogance, and just some absolutely catastrophic decision-making. To truly understand why this journey goes so horribly, horribly wrong, we have to look at the central conflict that drives every single event. See, survival in this epic isn't about how well you swing a sword. It's a constant, brutal tug-of-war between intellect and lethal impulsivity. On one side, you have intelligence. We're talking patience, cunning, restraint, playing the long game. But on the other side, impulse, greed, unearned pride, and this desperate hunger for immediate gratification. Keep this battle in mind as we go forward, because I promise you, every single time Odysseus or his men choose impulse, people die.
Let's start with Act 1, Hubris and the Curse, the fall from glory.
What's really heartbreaking about this timeline is exactly how all that time gets lost. Odysseus isn't just slowly, leisurely sailing for a decade. No, massive chunks of his life are literally stolen by monsters, magic, and captivity. I mean, an entire year is lost to a witch. 7 solid years are erased in divine captivity. The voyage starts with immediate chaos, for sure, but the actual passage of time becomes this incredibly heavy psychological weight.
The problems? They begin almost immediately, setting a terrifying precedent. First, the fleet stops to raid the Cicones. Odysseus, being the strategist, orders a quick retreat. But his men, who are drunk on victory and wine, just flat out refuse. They loiter on the beach, get hit by a massive counterattack, and suffer heavy, totally unnecessary losses. Then, they get blown off course to the land of the Lotus Eaters. The locals there offer the crew a sweet, narcotic plant. And the moment the men eat it, poof, they lose all ambition, all memory, all desire to go home. Odysseus literally has to drag his own screaming, drug-addled men back to the ships and tie them down just to keep the journey alive. It's wild.
Starving and desperate, they next land on the island of the Cyclops. They wander into this cave full of cheese and meat, only to realize too late they are trapped by its owner, the giant, cannibalistic Cyclops, Polyphemus, who immediately eats several crew members alive. Now, Odysseus, playing that intelligent Mong game we talked about, knows he can't just kill the giant in his sleep. If he does, they'll be trapped behind the cave's massive boulder door forever. So what does he do? He gets the monster dead drunk and tells him his name is Nobody. Later, when Odysseus blinds the giant with a sharpened wooden stake, the Cyclops screams to his brothers outside, "Nobody's killing me, nobody." Confused, the other giants just walk away, allowing Odysseus and his surviving men to escape the next morning by clinging to the undersides of the giant's sheep. Brilliant, right?
Well, here is the crucial turning point, where Odysseus's brilliant intelligence is completely undermined by his own hubris. Safely back on his ship, totally overcome by his own massive ego, he makes the most catastrophic mistake of his entire life. He yells his real name back to the bleeding giant. Bad move. Polyphemus just happens to be the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea. So the giant prays to his father, cursing Odysseus to lose all his men and return to a broken home. Poseidon hears it, and boom, the entire universe is suddenly rigged against them. Moving right along to Act 2, the cost of disobedience. Descent into chaos. At first, they actually catch a break. They meet Aeolus, the wind god, who gives Odysseus a tied bag containing all the stormy, dangerous winds, leaving just a gentle breeze to guide them home. It works so perfectly. They sail so close to Ithaca, they can literally see the fires on the shore. But of course, while Odysseus is sleeping, his greedy crew gets impulsive. Convinced the bag is full of secret gold, they tear it open. An unleashed hurricane blasts them all the way back out to sea. And with no divine help left, they drift straight into the land of the Laestrygonians, bloodthirsty, cannibalistic giants. The math here is just brutal. The giants stand on the cliffs, pelting the fleet with massive boulders. 11 of Odysseus's 12 ships are totally pulverized. Hundreds of men die. Only Odysseus's single ship barely makes it out alive. This absolutely devastating loss forces Odysseus to adapt. Down to just one ship, they land on the island of the witch goddess Circe. She promptly drugs a scouting party and turns them into literal pigs. But Odysseus, finally using his head, uses a magic herb from the god Hermes to resist her magic. He pulls his sword, demands his men be changed back, and uses diplomacy to turn a deadly enemy into a vital ally. Circe then gives him a genuinely chilling directive. To survive, he has to sail to the underworld to consult the dead prophet Tiresias. Think about that. Odysseus braves the literal realm of the dead, confronting his past and his fallen friends, just to learn the strict rules for surviving the future. Armed with this new, hard-won knowledge, they face the Sirens, monsters whose bewitching song forces sailors to basically throw themselves into the sea. Odysseus really wants to experience the knowledge of their song, but he knows his own impulsive weakness, so he structures a physical constraint. He orders his crew to plug their ears with thick beeswax so they are totally deaf to it, and he has them tie him tightly to the ship's mast. As they sail past, he screams, he begs to be untied, completely consumed by the impulse of the song, but his deafened crew just keeps their heads down and rows on, saving his life. Immediately after that psychological torture, he faces an impossible physical nightmare, navigating a narrow strait between two terrifying threats. On one side, Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that will suck down the entire ship and kill absolutely everyone. On the other side, Scylla, a monstrous creature with 6 devouring heads. Odysseus has to do the brutal math of leadership here. He deliberately steers the ship closer to Scylla. 6 of his men are snatched into the air and devoured, screaming his name. It is a calculated, horrifying sacrifice made just to ensure the rest of the ship survives. But sadly, that survival is incredibly short-lived. Stranded by storms on the island of the sun god Helios, the starving men break the one major rule Tiresias warned them about. While Odysseus is sleeping, again, they give in to their hunger and slaughter the sun god's sacred cattle. This is it, the ultimate fatal cost of impulse. Helios demands justice, and Zeus delivers instant, terrifying retribution. He hurls a lightning bolt that shatters the final ship into pieces. Every single crew member drowns in the roaring sea. Out of an entire fleet, Odysseus is now completely, utterly alone, clinging to a piece of driftwood. Which brings us to Act 3, Isolation and Rebirth, from captivity to civilization. So Odysseus washes up on the island of Ogygia, home to the nymph Calypso, and she keeps him captive for 7 agonizing years. But she isn't torturing him in a dungeon, she's offering him a false paradise. She even promises him eternal youth and immortality. Yet Odysseus spends his days just weeping on the beach. He completely rejects a comfortable, immortal existence because he wants his mortal life, his wife, and his true identity back. Eventually, the gods force Calypso to let him go. After his raft is destroyed by Poseidon one last time, he washes ashore on the island of the Phaeacians. Here, Princess Nausicaa and her parents offer him something he hasn't experienced in a decade: simple human dignity. They bathe him, feed him, listen to his incredible, heartbreaking story, and finally, using their legendary ships, they sail him back to Ithaca. Finally, we reach Act 4, The Reckoning, justice restored in Ithaca. Now, the threat waiting for him at home isn't a magical monster or an angry god, it's over 100 aggressive, heavily armed men. Assuming Odysseus is long dead, these suitors have completely infested his palace. They are drinking his wine, slaughtering his livestock, draining his wealth, and violently pressuring his wife, Penelope, to marry one of them so they can basically steal his kingdom. It is a total home invasion. But here's the thing you have to know about Penelope. She is perfectly matched with Odysseus in sheer intelligence. She has been fighting a genius, covert war of psychological attrition. She tells the suitors, "Hey, I'll pick a husband just as soon as I finish weaving this burial shroud for Odysseus's elderly father." But every single night, by candlelight, she secretly unweaves the work she did that day. Through pure, cunning deception, she holds the line against 100 armed men for 3 full years before a maid finally betrays her secret. Knowing a frontal assault would be absolute suicide, Odysseus, aided by the goddess Athena, disguises himself as a filthy, broken old beggar. He infiltrates his own home, testing the loyalty of his people and enduring horrific abuse and mockery from the suitors. Together with his now-grown son Telemachus and his fiercely loyal swineherd Eumaeus, they hatch this terrifying surgical strike of a plan. Telemachus secretly removes every single weapon from the Great Hall. Then Penelope announces a contest. She will marry the man who can string Odysseus's massive hunting bow and shoot a single arrow through a row of 12 axe heads.
So, every suitor steps up. They strain, they sweat, they grunt, and every single one of them fails to even bend the wood. Then, the ragged beggar steps forward. Ignoring all their insults and laughter, he takes the bow. With the effortless grace of a musician tuning an instrument, he strings it. He knocks an arrow and fires it cleanly through all 12 axes. The disguise drops. The entire room freezes in absolute terror as the suitors suddenly realize the horrifying truth. They are locked in a room, completely unarmed, with the most dangerous legend of the Trojan War. The execution begins instantly. Odysseus drives his very next arrow straight through the throat of the lead suitor. What follows is a brutal, systematic purge of the palace until the floor is slick with blood. But even with the suitors completely wiped out, his hardest battle actually remains. Penelope, traumatized by 20 years of imposters, grief, and isolation, refuses to just blindly believe it's him. She issues one final, brilliant test. She casually orders a servant to move their heavy bridal bed out of her chamber. Odysseus instantly flares up in anger, shouting that it's impossible. He built that bed himself, carving it out of a living, rooted olive tree that forms the very foundation of their home. Hearing this incredibly intimate secret that only the two of them share, Penelope finally breaks down and embraces her husband.
But wait, the bloodshed isn't quite over yet. The next morning, the furious families of all those slaughtered suitors march on the palace, threatening to spark a devastating civil war. Just as the two sides clash, the gods intervene one last time. Athena descends from Olympus on the direct orders of Zeus. She forces both sides to drop their weapons, magically erasing the hatred from the town's hearts. This divine truce ends the endless cycle of vengeance, finally allowing the weary king to sit on his throne in peace.
Reunited at last, Penelope looks at the husband she hasn't seen in 2 decades and asks where he has been all this time. With tears in his eyes, Odysseus smiles and replies with one incredibly heavy question. Where do I begin? I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the exhaustion, the deep relief, and the immense weight of the 20 years of profound suffering they have both endured to reach this single moment. And this is exactly why a 3,000-year-old story still echoes so powerfully for us today. At face value, sure, the Odyssey is a cool mythological adventure about surviving monsters. But underneath, it is an incredibly uncomfortable exploration of what happens after the war is over. Odysseus doesn't come home the same man who left. He's shaped by severe trauma, impossible choices, and the brutal moral compromises of survival. So I want to leave you with this thought. When you strip away the gods and the magic, what does it truly cost a person to survive the unthinkable? And what exactly do you have to become along the way to finally make it home?